Opposed to, yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed. Because rather than getting drunk, falling out of, I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there. I believe that my family have been briefing the press solidly for well over a decade.
So, here is a wild question. What if Buckingham Palace just pulled off the longest, coldest power move in royal history? And what if Harry and Meghan were so caught up in their own story that they did not see the trap until it was way too late? Listen, the whole situation is actually insane. They walked away from the palace saying they wanted privacy, peace, and a normal life for their kids, away from all the cameras and pressure. It sounds reasonable, right? Except they have done more interviews, documentaries, and tell-all confessions than any working royal in history. So, the whole privacy thing is confusing to a lot of people. But here is what is interesting. They left to protect Archie and Lilibet from the royal spotlight, but then those same kids kept appearing in their narrative when the moment called for it. Meghan would talk about how difficult palace life was, then turn around and ask for the exact titles and recognition for her children from that same institution. It is like having a falling out with someone, then still expecting to be on the guest list for their party. Now, the palace. They stayed quiet. They did not respond to the interviews or the Netflix series. They just watched and waited. But that silence just shattered. And what they have done to Archie and Lilibet's place in royal history is more significant than any book or interview could ever be. Before we dive into how this actually played out, it would mean the world to us here at the Ruby Report if you'd go ahead and subscribe. Drop a like on this video and turn on your notifications so you do not miss what is coming next, because I am about to show you exactly how the monarchy makes moves that fly completely under the radar. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so to really get what just happened, we need to go back over a century. Because this whole thing is not new, it is about a system that got locked into place in 1917, and nobody just gets to rewrite it because it does not work for them. Get this, in 1917, King George V put out something called the Letters Patent. This document laid out exactly who gets to be called a prince or a princess. It is the rule book. And here is what it says. 3 things need to happen for a kid to get that royal title. First, a royal bloodline. Second, proper birth registration within the crown's jurisdiction. And third, you need that religious connection through the Church of England. That is it. Those are the requirements. They do not change based on where you live or your social media following. This was not set up to go after anyone. It was designed to keep the monarchy from turning into chaos. If there were no clear rules, every distant relative could claim their kid deserves a royal title. That is a free-for-all. See, here is the thing about these century-old documents. They carry more weight than any TV interview or streaming deal. The palace does not operate on feelings or trends. It operates on what has been established for generations. They cannot just bend those rules, even slightly. Once you make one exception, you have opened the door for everyone, and the whole foundation starts crumbling. Order is everything to them. Structure is how they have lasted this long. So, what happened with Harry and Meghan? They took a shot. They figured their fame and media presence could push Buckingham Palace into bending those old rules. But the palace just pointed back to 1917 and reminded everyone that institutions do not shift because you have a good story. It turns out the game was already decided before it even started. Okay, so in May 2019, Archie arrives. And this should have been the perfect royal baby moment, except it totally was not. At first, everything looked fine. The palace put out the official announcement, people celebrated, and Harry and Meghan did the photo op. But then, something weird happened. Archie's birth certificate got changed after it was already on file. Meghan's actual name just disappeared from the document. Instead of saying Rachel Meghan, it suddenly just said, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Just the title, no personal name. Now, you might think that is not a big deal, but in the royal world, that is huge because it had never been done before. Not with Diana, not with Kate. When their kids were born, their real names stayed on the certificates. So, what is the deal? Why was Meghan's name removed? Was it something she wanted? Did the palace make her do it? Nobody really explained it. It just got done quietly. And that one change opened up a lot of questions. Because in a family where every detail follows decades of patterns, when something breaks that pattern, everyone notices. Birth certificates are official legal documents. You do not just casually edit them, especially not for a royal baby where everything is supposed to be perfect. Every royal kid before Archie had their stuff lined up exactly with tradition. But Archie's looked different. It stood out. And when you stand out in the monarchy system, that is the institution saying something without actually saying it. The world saw an adorable baby, but if you looked at the paperwork, something else was happening. The documents were already suggesting that maybe Archie's spot in the royal setup was not as locked in as everyone thought. All right, so if Archie's birth raised some eyebrows, Lilibet's arrival took things to a whole other level. In June 2021, she is born in California, and right from the start, it is different. There is no announcement from Buckingham Palace, no official bulletin, no balcony appearance. Instead, Harry and Meghan's team puts out a press release. That is it. Now, for a celebrity couple, that is normal. But we are talking about someone born into a royal family. Historically, royal babies get at least some kind of official nod from the palace. Except with Lilibet, there was not one. No statement from the Queen, no formal record added, nothing showing her birth had registered with the institution. And this was not someone forgetting paperwork. This was a deliberate choice. Here is why that matters. When the palace officially acknowledges a birth, it is the act of weaving that child into the historical record. It is connecting them to centuries of documentation. By not saying anything, the palace was showing where things stood. When you compare it to William and Kate's kids, the difference is striking. Their births were treated as significant moments for the institution. Lilibet's birth was handled like a private family matter. In that world, silence carries its own powerful message. What it came down to is this: she is their daughter, no question. But from an institutional standpoint, she was not being included in the formal structure. She existed separately from it. And if you know how much weight the palace puts on official acknowledgments, the fact that they did not respond at all told the whole story. Okay, so now we get to the baptism, and this is where it gets really interesting. In the royal family, baptisms are not just family ceremonies, they are bigger than that. It is a formal tie between the child and the Church of England. Since the monarchy and the church are connected, that baptism links the kid to the whole system. For Lilibet, yes, there was a baptism in March 2023. It happened in California. They had friends there, and they made it personal. But here is where it gets tricky. The Church of England never put it in their official records. And that is the part that matters. See, every royal baby before her had their baptism written into the Church of England's official books. It becomes a part of the spiritual history of the whole setup. But Lilibet's baptism was handled differently, more like a private family thing. It was meaningful to them, but separate from the official royal system. So, she is in this interesting spot. From where the institution sits, she is not in their official documentation. Her baptism happened, no doubt, but it did not happen in the way that ties her into the royal religious tradition. It was their own ceremony in California, not a crown ceremony in England. And the way the palace looks at it, it is not complete because it did not go through their official process. And in their world, when something does not check all their specific boxes, they treat it like it is not fully there. To the family, that moment was real and important, but to the institution, it is like it never happened at all. All right, so here is where things get complicated for them. Think about what their whole public presence is built around, that royal connection. That is what everything traces back to. But here is what happens when that institutional backing starts to pull away, when it becomes clear the kids are not officially part of that system. The whole setup starts to look different. They built a massive brand around being insiders who chose a different path. But that story needs the connection to stay meaningful. When the children are not formally recognized, it shifts things. The identity that was so carefully built does not sit the same way. The documentaries offering that inside perspective land differently when the institution has drawn a clear line. The memoir positioning Harry as navigating a complicated family situation reads differently when the palace will not put his own children in their formal records. It is much tougher to be the voice sharing royal insights when the institution has effectively separated your own family from their official narrative. And here is how people see Archie and Lilibet. Without formal recognition, they are viewed as kids growing up in California. They have famous parents, but they are separate from the actual royal system. This is a challenge, especially since their post-royal career involves that royal background. When the palace signals the children are not in their structure, it is saying the connection is not what it used to be. The position shifts from being someone who stepped back while staying connected to being someone on the outside looking back in. And those are two really different places to be. Okay, so for Harry, this whole situation was personal. From what has been reported, he tried working things out behind the scenes. Multiple conversations trying to figure out if there was a way to keep his kids connected to that world he grew up in. But apparently, each time, the answer was the same. This is how the system is set up, and it doesn't work differently for anyone. Think about it from his perspective. He spent his whole life inside that world. He knows exactly what being included looks like. And now he is seeing his own kids positioned outside of it. For him, it is not just about rules on paper. It is about whether his kids stay connected to something that was his entire world. But from the other side, the institution is looking at this through a totally different lens. Their whole approach is that personal situations do not change the fundamental framework. So every time Harry would try to find middle ground, it just showed how different their two approaches are. He is building a new life in California, and the palace is still running on the same playbook it has used forever. The hard part is that the system does not operate based on wanting something or feeling strongly about it. It runs on a structure that stays the same, no matter who is involved. All right, so this is where everything got put down in writing. The palace made formal moves that basically locked in what years of silence had already been showing, that Archie and Lilibet were going to be positioned outside the main royal structure. In real terms, the automatic things people assumed about their status were clarified as not being there. The titles, how they show up in official records, all of it was spelled out as not being part of their setup. It comes down to whether you are part of the official structure or not. It is not about being more or less valued, just about where you fit in the formal system. The kids' names will still be everywhere, people will follow their story, but if you look at the actual documentation the monarchy keeps, the official family records, they will not show up there in the same way other royal kids do. That puts these kids in an unusual spot. They did not choose this, but they will grow up dealing with how things landed. From the institution's view, this is about keeping things running smoothly, making sure the systems that have worked for centuries stay consistent. For Archie and Lilibet, it means they are separated from the official part of that heritage, the part their dad lived his whole life inside of. Things wrapped up quietly, no big announcements, just documentation getting processed and filed away, legal language making official what had already been the reality for a while. It is one of those situations where what is written down matters way more than what gets said out loud. Once it is in the official system, that is what determines how everything moves forward. So here is where everything lands. Archie and Lilibet are not going to have their names in the official royal records like other royal kids do. They are growing up in California, connected to royalty through family, without being part of the formal system. What went down here was bigger than just some documents getting signed. It shows how the monarchy actually works, how it keeps its structure the same, no matter what. These kids are going to be okay. They will grow up with plenty of opportunities and people who love them. But they will also know they were close to being a part of something their dad spent his whole life in, close, but on a different track. Their parents wanted recognition. They tried doing things differently than how it has always been done, and the system basically responded with, "This is how we operate, and that doesn't change." Which leaves this question on the table. Could fame and public attention ever actually change something that has been running the same way for more than 100 years? Or were those two approaches just never going to meet in the middle? It turns out it is a pretty simple answer. The monarchy operates on a structure that stays put. And once that became obvious, everything else followed the pattern they have always used. But here is what is interesting. This did not just pop up out of nowhere. The early signs were their way before most people caught on. The decisions that led here started way back. If you want to see how it all connects, how those early moments set the stage for what happened later, check out my previous video. Once you see the whole timeline, it all makes a lot more sense. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the system was doing what it is designed to do? Or do you think things could have gone a different way? I want to hear your take. Go watch that previous video, and you will see how the pieces were already moving way before this became the story everyone is talking about.